Welcome to the Real Estate Show. From buying to selling and everything in between. Rochester's home for everything real estate. And now, your hosts from the Anthony Butera Team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. It's Anthony Butera and Jason Mancuso.
Welcome to the Real Estate Show. We have Anthony and Jason here. Welcome. Hello.
What's up, boys?
Beautiful weather out there.
Beautiful weather. Mark's got a green microphone cover.
Yeah, pop screen, man.
He's had that.
Has he?
Where you been? Yeah.
I don't know.
So what's the new I know we do Bills talk a lot. What's the new stadium called now? Is it Highland?
Yeah, I don't
Not
even
new stadium.
know.
New stadium name.
No,
New stadium name.
I can't remember. It wasn't anything I've heard of, I feel like.
Yeah.
I love all
I
these
can't
others.
keep up with it.
All these other cities get like, national brands. This one, we get like Salen's hot dogs.
Yeah, we talked about it before. Anthony Butera Team Stadium.
Come on, make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with the Wii show.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? I saw an article this week how Google searches for some question like when is the housing market going to crash or the bubble burst is spiked like 2,500%. On an inquiry basis in the last whatever it was month or week or whatever, but
Yeah.
so it's we get that a lot. It's worth diving into. Do we think the housing market's going to crash? Based on the roller coaster, the uphill roller coaster that we're on right now over the last 4 years. Is it going to be a pretty steep decline when everything's happened?
So I actually had this conversation last night with sellers. I was on a listing appointment, and husband's a sharp dude, really fiscally responsible. And his thought process was, let's sell our house now because I see how much our neighborhood's grabbing as far as purchase prices go, and we'll rent something and we'll wait for the market to calm down. Right? And at surface level, it's like, yeah, capitalize on this market and then hope that the market calms down, right? So he asked me my opinion on it. I said, well, the logic makes sense if everything happens how you're anticipating. And my fear is because they're talking about buying 500, 600,000. And once I relayed what the net effect is of 1 point for a mortgage, right? You're talking $500, $600 more a month. So to get top dollar and then go rent and wait for the market to calm down, I said, well, you would have to get something for probably $100,000 cheaper to make up for, right? Probably $100,000 cheaper to make up for the interest rate.
Well, I just did the math on that $500 a month. If you get a 30-year mortgage and you ride that out, it's $180,000
Crazy
over the life of the loan.
Yep.
So and that plays into the example that we've been talking about for years now, right? But
yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're good. I don't even know, what were we talking about? The Bills?
Exactly. I think, relevant to this example, there's value in convenience, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if it's like, if you're going to be totally miserable having to move twice, move in with parents, rent a place, whatever, you got to factor that in, right? You're okay with that and can roll with those punches and then decide to kind of take on the risk of, okay, what's the interest rate when I do find a place to buy or get to buying? Can't really say it's a bad strategy if it all adds up for you, right?
Yeah, in my pursuit to be the world's worst salesperson, By the time we were done with the conversation and they were describing the kind of house that they are looking for and where they want to be, I sat there and I said, guys, I know just the house. And they go, really? I said, yeah, you're living in it. Like huge, I mean, you're talking 3,000 square foot, beautiful home, in-ground pool, like, pool house, great neighborhood. And the more they were talking, the more it was like, geez, I'm about to convince them that they're in the perfect scenario, and they kind of are, and yet they still want to keep their eyes open and see what's out there.
Yeah, that's a conclusion that we come to all the time with potential clients or people that we know, right?
Yeah, for sure.
No sense in us selling your house and with that plan, and then come to find out you can't find anything, and you wish you would have stayed in the house.
Exactly. And that happens to a lot of people, right? They move because they thought they wanted to move, and we want to capitalize on this market, and yet you're not really moving forward unless you're moving out of state. Or just deciding to rent the rest of your life too. I mean, I think a lot of people are taking that tune, and if I'm 65 plus, I don't know if I'm buying another house. Maybe renting is the plan, right? Capitalize on this market and go and rent, pull your equity out. And renting's not always the wrong choice. I know we're supposed to say that. And we'll probably be out of business by the end of this podcast, Jason. So I apologize.
No, we'll be that much more business because that's how we run it, right? You can trust us. We're not just here for a deal, and even like something like that sounds like it's pretty good price tag on their home. Mm-hmm. And why the hell do we tell somebody to do something that we know doesn't make sense, or at least just like, hey, have you guys ever thought about it this way? So that's good. That's good. So. Is the housing market going to crash? Is the topic. What's your take?
It's not going to crash here locally. It's going to look much different in 3 years, right? Like that's as aggressive as I'm willing to get, right? Because if you listen to our podcast 3 years ago, we probably said the same thing. And we thought that the prices hit the absolute ceiling, and look at the market we're living in. There's no end in sight. And it was funny because I got an email this morning about Biden pushing for a first-time home buyer tax credit. And it's like, yeah, that's really great. And we need a seller tax credit to get these people the hell out of their homes. Right? Yeah. Giving first-time home buyers a tax credit is only going to make it worse because the demand to buy homes has never been higher. So a lot of times when they issue these tax credits, my thought was, why not issue forget $5,000 tax credit, issue $15,000 new construction credit, because now you're helping the real estate industry. And you're helping the new construction industry. You're helping electricians. You're helping right? So we need more homes. There's not enough to go around. So to me, you want to change things, new construction tax credit.
Ever thought about running for office?
Yeah. I want to be right in between Sleepy Joe and Donald Trump. Somewhere in between there. I guess I'm looking to be Hillary Clinton.
That's really hot.
It is hot.
Yeah, it is kind of hot. So you mentioned 3 years ago, and what we would have said then, and it not adding up to where we're at now. I mean, it's every year for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been saying this is the craziest market we've ever seen in the history of real estate, and that's been the truth. It just keeps piling on and keeps accelerating forward. And I mean, again, to your point, 2 years ago I've been like, this has to end. It can't keep going, and we've had our biggest increases since.
How about people 2 years ago that said, let's sell and we'll go and rent something, and now they're sitting there going, oh my God, we probably could have got $50,000 more. And you're probably right? So you got to almost be like, you got to be careful what you wish for, right? There's like, by waiting, there's going to be a catch, and you really got to think that through, right? Like,
Right.
it's much cheaper to travel to Florida in October. Yeah, you're right. And it's hurricane season, right? Like there's going to be a catch. And I don't know if necessarily waiting is going to be the answer.
I think we got to look at, the last crash, from 2007, 8, 9, that time period, and make sure that we understand that, like, this is totally different from what happened then. And to see how things did crash, literally, like, across the board in markets that had big appreciation gains and lost them, there's a totally different cause and effect to that, and it's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to answer the question, like, are we in a bubble that's going to burst, or is the housing market going to crash? Don't get me wrong. I think there's going to be corrections, and there's a difference between correction and crash, right? In that, like, everything market-based economy works on a cycle. And, there's the other end to the cycle. So it's pretty obvious where we're at right now. There's a 180 to where we're at right now. And what does that look like is kind of, what we're talking about. What's the answer to that question? What does it look like when things shift or when things change from where they're at now?
So me personally, I don't know if the outlook of the greater Rochester area has ever been better. And people are going to hear that and go, the hell is this guy talking about? Like, listen, the values here are now reaching a level that people would never think that they would see in their lifetime, because for 20 years, the values didn't really budge.
Yep.
Right. And now it's happening. And listen, whether you guys like it, want to admit it or not, Rochester's becoming really attractive to people, whether they're coming from downstate or out of state. And we keep finding more and more jobs. Our unemployment rate's extreme. Like, we've got a lot of cool things happening, and we're not so dependent on 3 employers like we were 25, 30 years ago, right? We have a ton of technology. I mean, the amount of companies that I hear about for the first time from people when I'm sitting in their living room or kitchen table on listing appointments, it was like, I think it's the coolest thing ever when you hear about some of these jobs. So like, wait, what do you do? I sell the tape that you put on brass screw threads.
Hey, that was my first choice as a career,
Trevor, that's not a job, Trevor. Stop it.
No, but to the point, there's a ton of talent in this market. And I've always said, like, that is what's carried us, past the collapse and downfall of Kodak and Xerox and Bausch and Lomb in this market as major employers. That's what carried us, in those days and up until now and beyond, versus like, Detroit, Michigan as the opposite example, right? Like, auto industry has issues and the whole freaking town is, literally like vacant as a result.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I think another key point here, look at the national average of what a home sells for. It's right around, I think it's right around 370.
God,
$370,000 nationally is what your average home sells for, versus Rochester being, maybe it's 200,000 or so right now. To me, that's a key factor of what we're talking about in terms of, like, is the bottom going to fall out here locally? Are we going to be in trouble? And I guess I'm maybe even overly optimistic, but I really don't think like we're looking at a crash scenario. And let's just define crash as, like, if your house was worth 150 2-3 years ago and it's worth $200,000 now, and in another year or two, it drops to 150 again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that happening. Now, is there going to be corrections to where 200 turns into 190? I could see that.
But here's my whole position, right? So think about Rochester at our absolute worst moments. We're probably talking maybe 2005, somewhere in that range, when just like Kodak did their final purge and 90% of the employment, like, the values didn't go down in Rochester. right?
Yeah.
And that
I
was
in college,
catastrophic.
so I
And that was
wasn't really paying
catastrophic.
attention.
That was
Yeah.
catastrophic. But the values didn't go
Yeah.
down. So if the worst case scenario is that they're going to stay the same, I think everybody can live with that. I mean, dude,
Yeah.
you can't even find an apartment to rent right now, right?
Yep.
And if you go back 2 years, there's no shortage of terrible news for this country, and yet somehow fucking economy is still thriving. And obviously the fear is, how do we pay back the trillions and trillions of debt that we accrued? I'll tell you how. You adopt a Chinese kid. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, we're accumulating debt. We gotta, it's gonna have to get paid back somehow, but I don't know. Right now, everything's looking on the up and up. So if you want to be positive things will happen. If you want to be negative, you'll be Jason.
Ooh, that man. Ooh, that man. No, I'm positive about the future. I don't see there being major adjustments that are going to significantly hurt people. You get caught up in these crazy bidding wars that we're talking about. Piggybacking off the last episode was like buyers waiving appraisal cost, differences and covering that. And then if they have to move a year later, when, if it plays out that, say they have to move in a short term where, the market is correcting at that point, sure, they could be, that could hurt a little bit.
So what happens? Sorry. What happens if the prices of the value of the house does drop and you owe more than the house is worth? What happens in that situation? Do you just keep paying your mortgage? Does anything change, or?
Well, it depends on the individual situation, right? Like if you're in a spot where you can no longer pay your bills, then you got to consider your options. And, by definition, the term short sale, which would be one option, is okay, the house is only worth this much and we owe this much more than that. And we have to ask the bank for that forgiveness, and just to sell it and move forward.
But ultimately, like if you're in your forever home, like you picked a forever home and the value goes down a little bit, you just pay your morttage and you're fine, right?
You pay your bills and nothing.
That's it, right? It's not a big deal. That's your house.
Let's equate it to this. Think of, if you got your retirement account, your 401k, whatever, like, they'll advise you, like, just don't even look at it. Like, you're not touching this. You can't touch it without being penalized till whatever age. And that's 30 years from now. Mm-hmm. So if you're comfortable financially and making your payments and you love the house and you don't need to move, or there's not a major life event that requires you to move or requires you to, fall behind on payments financially, just plow through it.
Yeah,
don't
do
pay
your
attention
thing.
to what the market around you is doing. You got a home to live in. Be grateful for that. Mm-hmm. It's when like you either have to do something and move or can't afford the payment that you're in, and you're on the wrong end of the cycle to where if you paid $300 and the house can only sell for $250 and you got that shortage, then there's, okay, what are our options? Can you cover the difference? Do you have to do a short sale? Do you have to stop making payments because it's that bad and you belly up and get foreclosed on? Obviously, these are all things we're looking to avoid. So, without that happening, if you're comfortable financially and you're comfortable in the home that you're in, then don't even pay attention to what the market's doing around you. It'll drive you nuts, frankly, if you do, right? Because you could be, I'm kind of in that boat right now. Like we're planning on staying in our forever home, and also looking at it like, shit, look at what we could sell this thing for right now. We have no plans to move, so it's really pointless to even go down that path of thinking, right? And, same thing for the opposite. If you're in your forever home and the market is tanking by chance, who cares?
But here's another thing that
until you have to move, right?
The other thing people aren't considering is like existing homeowners, right? Let's use you as an example, Mark. What did you pay for your house?
110.
110.
115, something like that.
So knowing what you paid for it, knowing what you've done to it, like I can say with extreme confidence that your home would sell for $200,000. And with that being said, it's great. And yet it probably still doesn't make sense for you guys to go and overpay for something based on what you paid for your house. But the cool thing is, and I think the security blanket for people, especially here locally with the values of what they've done, is if stuff ever really went bad, like you have equity in your home that you could borrow money against cheap.
Yep.
You're talking under 4% because it's your money you're borrowing. It's your equity, right? Yep. So I think that's going to provide even more security for people. I mean, look at everyone's net worth has gone up substantially over the last few years because of what this market's doing.
It's a great point in terms of like the financial advisor aspect of this, of you have what is most likely your biggest asset in your home and the real estate that you own, and you're gaining equity as it goes. So, you know, I mean, I guess it all depends on that loan amount that you have the mortgage on, but, you know, as long as there's equity, then that's an asset, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. You know, it may, and depending on how the cycle plays out, you know, yeah, if you don't need to move, but you want to take equity out and get a loan against it, you may not have that option if the house can't appraise for what you want it to. But, you know, again, you still got a place to live and, you know, you're comfortable with that payment. All good, in my opinion.
Yep.
I don't, to answer the question, I don't think we're crashing. There'll always be times of adjustments, but I think for long term, this market locally, we're in good shape. Other markets, even nationally, you know, they see more dips, ups and downs, you know, more swings than us in general. So, you know, they could see those swings take place, you know, in a negative market. But I don't think we're looking at like the real estate market like we were, you know, over a decade ago with that mess. So
does it change at all depending on, like, you know, if we look at the Rochester market, there's more of like the low end, middle end, high end market, you know, like price wise. Does it all react the same, or is like one like, oh, that'll be a bigger dip, that'll be, you know, that's more steady?
I'm going to say it's pretty level across the board in different prices because, you know, it's not to say that there's not bidding wars and demand for the higher priced, you know, homes in this market, but, you know, there's less to where it's, you know, we're hearing stories nationally, like homes are literally selling $1 million over asking price. That's never going to happen here.
Right.
Right. So
I should sell my house. Get $1,115,000. You know.
Right. If a $600,000 home, you know, sells for $650,000, you know, those are like bigger chunks. I think it, you know, from a percentage basis, I think it's kind of similar across the board. Whereas, like, if it's a $75,000 home that sells for, you know, 100. You know, or whatever the math is, right? You know, it's kind of all the same type of, you know, but the way it plays out is pretty similar across different price points. So, feel good, Rochester people.
Not a big crash. All right, well, you can check out the podcast at anthonybuterateam.com and the Facebook. Subscribe there. All right, guys.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Show. Find us on Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. If you're looking to sell or buy, talk to the Anthony Butera Team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. Visit anthonybuterateam.com.